So we're delighted to have, and our grateful thanks to the Provost and one of our former Provosts, Professor Hegarty, who's a physicist here, and all of our distinguished guests. We are here to celebrate our colleague, which is probably the pinnacle of what a university is about, the level of scholarship. And we're going to come to that in a moment, Professor. But first of all, I think we need to acknowledge who's here to support Taha. And we're delighted to have the head of school here, Professor Paula Grady, our head of sociology, I see, smiling at me, Jan Skopek, and many colleagues from the school. But particularly, we're delighted, and this is quite unusual, and it's a testament to yourself, Taha, that we have colleagues here from Workday. We're delighted to have Brendan here, Dr. Brendan Jennings, who is the Vice President for Research from TU Dublin. The collaborations really signify, I think, the work that Taha has championed, which is that interdisciplinary nature. We have colleagues here from Enterprise Ireland, Dr. Anton Plush. We have colleagues from UCD, from Princeton, from Rotterdam, from Munich, from London, Oldenburg, Helsinki, Vienna, Göttingen, and very, very specially, which I thought was lovely, was, and I had the great privilege of chatting to his PhD and his postdoc supervisors and his advisors. And we have Professors Ryan Cree, Alexander Hartman, and Yanis is there, Kurtz, which says a lot to me. And what it joins up all the dots in terms of who Taha is. And I'm even using your first name more casually, because the humility of you, the kind of person that you are, is reflected in those that are here. And that brings us more particularly to the people that have been at the forefront, I think, of who you are as a person, which is your research team. Because when Taha started, and I met him, I only started in this role in June, and it was his research colleagues, and we are joined by How and Rachel and other members of your team here today, that he was concerned about, and having space and opportunity for them. And again, that speaks volume about who we have. And then last, but absolutely not least, we have Ksenia, who I had the pleasure to meet just a few moments ago, his wife, and herself in her own field, very accomplished in the discipline of medicine. And it's wonderful as well that you're joining us here. We also remember this evening your own mother, your brothers, and your family members who are with us in spirit, and also we're recording this just for their benefit. So they're all very, very welcome. What can we say about this area? And I had to, Workday is very, very familiar to me. The field, I love their mantra of elevate humans. And the title of this talk, I'm slightly concerned in some ways because it brought me into mind of what I would know as Gilbert Ryle's phrase around the ghost in the machine. And I was having nightmares thinking, if I was trapped in the machine, I know what was happening. The human in the machine, it would kind of be pressing escape to get me out. Escape, control, alt. I would be inside pressing anything that looked like a button. But that whole area is fascinating to us. This kind of what I would have known as the Cartesian dualist account of the mind and the body, we now have a different relationship in terms of AI and where it's bringing us. So to have our inaugural, and Professor Taha Yasseri is the inaugural Workday Professor of Technology and Society here at Trinity College Dublin and at our colleagues in Technological University Dublin is really quite an achievement. The interdisciplinarity nature of it, the bringing of the universities together, you can hear the group that we have before us. It demonstrates the interest that we have in this area. And what I love as well is the humanity, and I'm very excited to hear the contribution, the speech that we're going to have in a little while. What really engaged me, again back to Ksenia, was your, I suppose, comment about why this means so much to you. around shaping the world because they're expecting their first child, and around shaping the world so that the space that we will all enter into will be different. And we're hoping that it will be a better world for all of us. And I think that motivation speaks powerfully again, underpins everything that you're doing and why you're doing it. If we were to situate Taha, we couldn't have found a better school, because not only have we a physicist, but coming into conversation with our School of Social Sciences and Philosophy is a beautiful synergy. It's a wonderful connection with sociology. And our school here is a very, very fine school, so third largest in the university, and one of the highest in the rankings in our faculty here. So very, very impressive space in which to facilitate the scholarship that you're going to bring. I couldn't attempt to go through the level of, and I would encourage you all to really look up the level of achievements that you have clocked up so quickly. It's mind-blowing in truth. I'm not entirely sure if there is a machine and the human or vice versa. It is rather extraordinary in terms of your own PhD scholarship in Germany, the roles that you've had. This, of course, to me was really interesting, that you were Senior Research Fellow in the Alan Turing Institute in Oxford. More than 100 books and chapters, awards in terms of Wolfston College. It's just one after the other. It does really highlight for us that we are truly honoured and blessed to have you joining our faculty here. He could have gone, where's Professor Hayward, he could have gone to physics. Goss, no. So we are delighted to keep you in the Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences, and to bring us forwards in this conversation in an interdisciplinary manner. So I'm going to pass over now, and as you see here before us, a phenomenal title to Professor Taha Yasseri, and to wish you all the very best as you start your career here in Trinity. We're all behind you, and really are amazed at what you've achieved so far, and can't wait to see what is yet to come. So good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. Well, thank you very much for the very nice introduction. When your office suggested 1st of April as the day for this event, I thought, oh, that all makes sense. This is a massive prank that TCD and TU Dublin are pulling together collaboratively, but apparently it's our real, unless someone jumps out and says, April Fool. And now I have to give the lecture. Well, it's really amazing to be here, and just looking at your faces and recognize a few of you, and then also those of you who I haven't met before, thought that there is something for you here tonight. I see my wife is here, my high school teacher, my PhD advisors, my postdoc mentors, colleagues from Workday, colleagues from TU Dublin, of course, colleagues from TCD. I recognize few faces from UCD, where I was before moving to TCD. Members of the Argentinian tango community of Dublin, I recognize few faces. Faces and people that I usually do not see under the same roof. So this is a really good rehearsal for my funeral, I guess. Well, starting the lecture with a funeral joke. Welcome to Ireland. Speaking of funerals, I lost my dad about a year ago, and I was at his funeral last January. And there was a gentleman giving a speech, and he was saying that, you know, how precious life is, and on these occasions we have to remember that how important it is to be grateful to be alive and to have the chance of living. Very interesting point he was making, and then he started sort of pushing it a bit, saying that, you know, when you hear animals are making noises, they are basically thanking the universe or the God for being. I thought, okay, that's a very poetic interpretation. And then he started saying, for example, all the birds. And then he kept going and listed all the birds, the sparrow, crow, pigeons. And then at some point it became quite funny. And, you know, I'm at my dad's funeral and I couldn't really help it. But it was quite educational in terms of, you know, how to fill the 2 hours of the lecture, just create a long list of examples and go through them. So preparing for classes have become much easier for me. But joking aside, I'm very happy and grateful to be just like a pigeon among yourselves, and thank you very much for being with me here tonight and this evening to listen to this lecture. I also want to ask you please to join me, giving a round of applause for my mom and my brothers who are not with us today, but they will be watching the video. And of course, my in-laws. I'm a sociologist. No fans in the room? I'm a sociologist. At least I can make that claim now with the robe and everything. And my job is to study humans. So tonight I'm going to talk about 7 different types of people or individuals. The first person I'm going to talk about is the most important person in my life, and that would be myself. I know it's a bit arrogant, but without me, I wouldn't even be here. I was born in 1984 in Tehran, and that's also the year that this character was born. Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger is older, but those of you who remember the movie, it was also released 40 years ago in 1984. And I get back to that because that is one of the movies that really shaped our collective minds about technology, future of technology, and maybe even artificial intelligence. This is me on a Bring Your Son to Work day, pretending that I am doing my dad's job. He was an audit, imposter already back then, as you can see. And this is an interview that I've done with a youth magazine, a national youth magazine back in Iran. Not because I was important or had done anything. It was 2005, the International Year of Physics, celebrating 100th anniversary of Einstein's papers. And we have been doing some publicity in terms of bringing STEM into the public discourse and so on. So there was this interview that I attended. The interview is not really that exciting. Now that I read it, it's quite surprising actually how differently I was thinking when I was an undergrad student. But there is one question, particularly the interview asked me what's the most exciting moment in a physicist's life, as if I know. And I say, for me, it's the day I published my first article in a reputable journal. It's not a dream, but an important goal. A bit sassy. Well, I learned today that apparently I have published more than 100 publications, so I guess I can go back, if you don't mind, and tell that guy, well, you will make it, don't worry. I know it sounds, again, a bit arrogant, but I'm showing you this not because of the content and because of the sort of self-congratulatory comments, because of the photos. These photos turned out to be quite influential because I did this interview in 2005, and Nespresso released this ad campaign in 2006. I haven't received any loyalties, but great ideas spread. So there is a lot to talk about Nespresso. It's politics, in terms of child exploitation, all the accusations. But I don't want to go into that direction. I just want to say I like this ad. It's very effective. Nespresso, what else? And I like ads. I sometimes go to cinemas just for the commercials. However, things have changed. Now we are bombarded with ads and commercials on our phones, online, on Instagram, on YouTube. And they're not really that great anymore. I saw this one a few weeks ago. It's an app which is an AI designed signature app. So basically you type in your name and it creates a very interesting, very attractive signature for you. We used to do it with Word, MS Word, but I don't think you need AI for that. And the claim is really the one that bothers me. Women find men with professionally designed signatures 89% more attractive. So, okay, how to measure this? How to define more attractive? Who has done this piece of research? And that really bothers me because, we are doing serious research. And when we say 89%, hopefully we mean something by that. And then in the public discourse, for sort of financial benefit or commercial benefits, these claims are being made, and then somehow it affects the way that public looks at our work. And then come times like pandemic where scientific merit is important to shape the public discourse and public policy. We might not be as capable as before in convincing people that when we say 89%, we mean it. Anyway, this is just one example. Here is another one from YouTube that 48% of senior AI professionals plan to invest over 1 million in Gen AI within the next 12 months. Again, when you think about this sentence, it's completely meaningless. And it's just, trying to convince that if you have a company, if you have some money, you have to invest in AI, give us your money, and we do amazing things with it. So I'm going to show a few more of this example as we continue, but that was the first person. The second person I want to talk about tonight is my wife, Ksenia, who is here. And I can tell you how amazing she is and how great she is in inspiring me and supporting me. A lot of sort of subjective things. I can tell you everything I do at this point of my life is for her, and she gives meaning to everything that I do. But on more objective sort of aspects, she earns more than me, she publishes better than me, and she literally saves lives. So this is really, it's a sort of humbling experience, borderline humiliating experience to live next to her on a daily basis. And most of my friends and families are still surprised at how did you manage to, convince Ksenia to be with you? And I tell them, Mom, I don't know, why don't you ask her yourself? But quite recently, actually, I think I figured out what attracted her to me. Let me show you just one picture. That must be the signature, right? And as if she's not amazing enough already, she's carrying and growing our baby, who will be the third person I'm going to talk about tonight. So, at some point we started telling our friends and family that we are expecting a baby. And usually the first reaction is, congratulations. The second question or the second comment is always, what is it? Is it a boy or a girl? So as a sociologist, then I start saying, well, you are referring perhaps to sex because gender is a social construct and it's something to, not up to us. And then I look at the person who asked this question, usually they are gone. And then I shout, no, it's a baby girl, it's a baby girl. But so as a sociologist, as a person, maybe not, you don't even need to be an academic to start thinking and having this sort of imaginary conversation with your future baby when you're in this situation. And ask yourself, how am I going to explain this? How am I going to explain that? What if the baby asks me about, I don't know, Santa, about Christmas, about war? How can I explain war in 2025 to my baby? That institutionally we kill each other. And that is sort of fine if we follow the rules. How can I explain that without saying there are good people and there are bad people and we are good people and we are entitled to kill bad people? That's the narrative that we stick to, which is very difficult to explain to a baby, particularly a baby who is born to a Muslim guy from Iran, Jewish mom with family in Israel. Who is the bad? Who is the good? Of course, in this case, I have to favor my family over my in-laws, but putting that aside, the life that we are living at the moment is sometimes difficult to explain and to explain that how we are sort of fine with it. So those are big questions, those are big things that keep me up at night, but then there are some sort of more daily life experiences stuff. I took this photo to the left from the hospital, Qom, you might know it, that is going to be the place that the baby is going to be born. It's just the book section of the shop in the hospital. And I don't know if this bothers you as much as it bothers me, labels, boys, girls, and the pink and the blue. And then what you see on the right side is an ad that Facebook showed me a few weeks ago. I'm not going to explain it. It's from a page called Dad Jokes Everywhere. And it's a remote control that you can use to control women, like mute them, doing the really terrible stuff. And my dad was one of the funniest people I ever met in my life. He never made any sexist or misogynist joke. And Facebook and all these algorithms and data scientists have decided this is the type of content they should show me on Facebook. And again, I wonder, what if a few years down the road, my daughter comes to me and says, what does it mean, this remote control thing that social media platform, I don't know what would be the name in the future, hopefully not X, is showing me. How can I explain that, yes, in 2025, the dad jokes are still extremely misogynist. And the books that, they sell in your hospital still have to label them based on the gender of the person who is going to read them. And, okay, I notice I'm going a little bit too negative. There are positives. I'm extremely proud and happy and humble to be attached to 3 universities in Dublin. Happens that all the 3 are run by very successful, influential women. Professor Linda Doyle is here, Professor Orla Philly, who was my boss before I moved, and Professor Deirdre Lillis, who is the new president of TU Dublin. So we have progress, yet not on all different directions that we should have had. Having said that, in these very fine institutions, we are still suffering from things that we have inherited. Only recently I learned that as an employee of TCD, or in fact any other university in Ireland, you cannot go on maternity leave if you're only 6 months into your job. You have to plan how to deliver a baby based on the job interview you get and so on and so forth. Well, because these institutions are designed for men. How sabbatical works, how grant proposals and competitions work. I've heard this anecdote from a colleague who was shortlisted for a huge ERC grant, and the interview date happened to be on the day that she was due to deliver a baby. And when they give her the date, she writes and says, guys, this is the situation. You have scheduled my interview for 8 a.m. on that day. That happens to be my due date. And she gets a reply that, how about the afternoon? I'm not making this up, this happens. Sorry, and if, like myself and my wife, you're expats, I know I have the color of migrants, but, we are kind of more expats, and you are in competitive job environments, you keep postponing your decisions, your life decisions, because of all these issues and all these barriers that we have. And then at some point you start thinking about, freezing eggs, IVF, this sort of plans that you have to now look into more carefully, more seriously, because you are aging and you have postponed these decisions simply because of your job. So in that mindset, and being sort of a researcher in AI, I saw this boss in Dublin, in BlackRock, and the ad particularly caught my attention. Egg freezing powered by AI, where science meets life. So that sounded amazing. I almost immediately parked the car and jumped on my phone, Googled, I know the hospital as well, found the page. This must be amazing, because at the time we were thinking about IVF and this and that. I can tell you, long story short, there is nothing behind this ad. I read everything that they had, which was like 4 pages of PDFs. Here are a few screenshots. That image to the bottom left is the most scientific image they had. There was no data, no validation, no testing of any sort. Basically, they take a picture of the egg, they compare it to a database, and based on the similarity between the 2 images, they give you a chance of this egg being fertile, which is the statistics 101. This is a very simple image analysis. Why we should label this as AI and why we should target those individuals who find themselves in these desperate situations, that would pay for anything, really. And how is that okay to have such ads on our buses in Dublin? There are already issues with the ads I showed you earlier on Facebook, on different social media, but then this is too close to home, and these things keep me bothering. So at this point, perhaps you're thinking, okay, Taha, stop talking about yourself and your family, talk about AI. Let's talk about AI. What's AI's gender? Think about it for a second. And I asked ChatGPT, are you a man or a woman or a non-binary? And the answer was, I don't have a gender, but if you prefer, you can think of me in whatever way feels natural to you. Some people imagine me as a helpful assistant without a physical form, while others might assign a personality to me based on how I interact. What about you? Do you think of AI as having a gender? I like how it asked the question, send it back to me. I do believe machines have gender, and I sort of try to convince you in the next 2 minutes. First of all, there is a human in the machine, particularly when we talk about machine learning or AI, as it's fashionable to refer to these days. The data that the algorithm is trained on comes from humans. The engineers who design the algorithm are humans, and we do know that they are not representative of all gender identities. And of course, the designers who design the products, the end products, reflect their sort of gender identities. But most importantly, I think, is the training data. Language models are trained on digital text that we have accumulated mostly on the internet. The information we have accumulated on places like Wikipedia. 98% of editors of Wikipedia are male. So there is no wonder that all the identity issues or biases that are reflected in Wikipedia are reflected in language models. So it is not completely crazy to think of gender as AI, AI as a gendered identity. Then there are instances that explicitly we assign gender signals or items that signal gender to AI. For example, Siri has a voice, which sounds like a female or stereotypical female voice. Alexa, the same. Sophia, the robot, has a female name. So these are signals that explicitly assign gender to these artifacts. And even when there is no signal or no explicit mention of gender, we anthropomorphize these objects. And this is in human nature, that we think of objects. Some of you might even refer to your cars with a human name. You might think of your car with some human characteristics and other objects. In fact, I want you to think about last time you interacted with ChatGPT, if you're a student, perhaps doing a homework, and think whether you are at the point to believe constantly that you're interacting with a machine, or you sort of anthropomorphize it. And if you do, are you polite to it? Are you nice to it? Do you think of it as a human with a gender? So there is research, and 75% of people in a survey assigned male gender to ChatGPT. However, depending on the type of use that they have, this could change. For example, the ones who use ChatGPT more for providing emotional support were more likely to think of ChatGPT as female. The ones who were using it more for providing information were more likely to think of ChatGPT as a man. So this is, again, anthropomorphism. We assign our experience with other experience and images that we have in other walks of life, which are, of course, not representative and biased based on our own experience. So we wanted to check this sort of gender manifestation, and we looked in a system where we had thousands and thousands of language models just interacting with one another with very little human intervention. These language models were assigned a gender at the beginning, but they were free to post whatever they want. And then we used another machine learning algorithm to assign a gender to the text that they're posting, and this algorithm is trained on human data. Okay? Basically, we were asking the machine to tell us what is the gender of these other machines based on the content they're producing. And we see as the time continues, the total number of active, we call these guys chirpers for some reasons, the total number is more or less balanced between the two main genders. But the content they produce is more and more perceived as if it was posted by men. The green line is deviating from the middle point more and more as we continue in time. So these agents basically learn to be popular in this social platform. They learn that the key to their success is to post things that are more masculine, that are more likely to be posted by men. And I don't know if you have had this experience, but a colleague of mine, a female colleague of mine once was telling me that she attended a workshop about management, how to manage a team, and basically the main message they were trying to convey was, you want to be successful, act like men. And in a way, we see that this is something that is happening among these machines. They want to be popular, they want to receive attention from other machines, and gradually they become more and more like men. Another ad from Instagram. "2025 energy is to write an email like a man." So as a man, I'm a little bit offended because not all of us write emails like this. As a sociologist, I'm more offended because this sort of encouragement of conformity is not going to help anyone. And as a physicist or former physicist, I'm really annoyed because of the use of the word energy. You know, this is this year's energy. Anyway, so when we talk about the gender of the machine, it's a relevant issue. And I wanted to convince you on that because that's the basic of what I'm going to talk to you in the next few minutes. But back to sort of people I'm going to mention tonight. Number 4 are all of my collaborators. I'm just showing you my students, but I have had many other collaborators who were not necessarily my mentees. And I'm planning to gradually replace them with AI. No, I'm not. However, the question of collaboration is very important in teamwork, in organizations, in collective intelligence that we human possess. And we often find ourselves these days in a situation that we are interacting with AI. Every time I say the word AI, it's a bit difficult. With a language model, which is exactly a statistical representation of the data that is fed to the algorithm. So we find ourselves interacting with these entities. And the question is that how the gender of these entities would affect our behavior. To test that, we use a sort of classic behavioral studies paradigm, prisoner's dilemma games. This is a simple game that you can only make 2 decisions. You can either be cooperative and make a decision which is supported by your partner, and in this case, you are both rewarded. But you can cheat and go solo and free ride, and if your partner stays nice, then you go home with a lot more reward. But then if both of you cheat and go solo, then you would be both punished. We find ourselves in situations similar to this on a daily basis, traffic rules. If everyone follows the rules, I don't need to follow the rules and get away. Vaccination, if everyone takes the vaccine, I don't need to take it. But if everyone thinks the same way, no one would take the vaccine. So this is a very classic social dilemma situation. We also asked the participants to tell us what they think the partner is going to do. So with this, for instance, if I decide to go solo, cheat, defect, knowing that my partner is or guessing my partner is gonna cooperate, then I'm exploiting them, okay? Whereas if I decide to go solo, guessing that my partner is also go solo, I don't trust my partner. So my defection is because of the distrust. So we could measure all this, and we hooked up people to play the game with human, or what we told them is AI. In the background, the decisions by the other party were made randomly. There was neither human nor AI, but in our experimental paradigm, we labeled them differently. People are only slightly more cooperative with when they're playing with other human than AI. So there is not much of defection against AI. However, when you look at the reasons when they defect, what they thought is the case, why they defected, we see a difference. When they defect against other humans, it's mostly because of distrust, because they thought the human is going to defect as well. But when they defected or cheated against AI, that was mostly because of exploitation. They actually knew that AI is going to play nice, but they felt it's okay to exploit it because it's a machine. We added gender dimension to this. We told participants that the AI is trained based on data coming from male or female, and we saw that people cooperate a bit more when they are playing with a female partner. But then when they defect, if that defection is against males, it's a lot more likely to be because of distrust, and when they defect against females, it's a lot more likely to be because of exploitation. They are playing nicer with female partners, but exploitation is much more common in that case. And then we mixed AI and gender. We basically had humans who were male and female, and AI who were male and female. And we see that the highest level of mistrust appears when they're playing against human males. Well done, guys. And the highest level of exploitation is when they're playing against female AI, like Siri, Alexa, all these, instances that we have. So it's not random that these companies decide to label or present their agents as female, because people are very likely to exploit them and more likely to buy the products because they feel powerful, they feel satisfied, and so on and so forth. And that's not a problem itself unless this sort of behavior affects the way that we behave other humans, particularly in this case females. If it becomes a habit for me to be rude to my navigator, that's not a problem. The navigator won't be offended. It's an algorithm. But that might make me pick up this habit of being rude to anyone with a similar voice, which would be my female colleagues and collaborators. I didn't mention anything about the participants' own gender. All the stories I told you, you might be wondering, okay, how about women? Are they behaving the same way? And the answer is yes. Whatever I reported so far is the same, regardless of the participants' gender. Now I'm going to talk about my mentors, supervisors, bosses, over the course of my studies and career. You see the faces, and I'm very happy that many of them are in the room. I had a mix of bosses with different gender identities, and I kept asking myself over the course of time that, particularly when they make a decision that I don't like, how would I have taken it differently if that decision was coming from a different person, maybe with a different gender? And it's difficult to answer because I have been only exposed to one version of the history, but then we could run the experiment, and that's what we did. We had a bunch of people online playing a game together, and we told them that we are monitoring you. Actually, a manager is monitoring you, and the manager decides to promote, to reward one of you, okay? And the manager could be a human, could be a machine, could be male or female. Before they played the game, we asked them, what is your preference for a manager? Or score different types of manager on different dimensions. This is fairness. And we see that before playing the game, they scored managers more or less the same. They gave 7 out of 10, regardless of gender or regardless of type. And then they played the game. They had to solve a puzzle, and then they had to sort of, here we introduce the manager to them, which is randomized, in this case, female AI. And then they had to work together, and eventually we told them that, okay, the best player chosen by your female AI manager is that player. So they're either selected to receive the award, or they are one of the other 2 who didn't receive the award. After this, we asked them again, was your manager fair to make this decision? And we expected the ones who received the award to sort of say, yeah, that was a very good manager that I had, and that's true. That's the change in the perception of fairness of the manager after the award was given. The results only for people who were awarded. And we see that, they are happier with the manager compared to before the experiment. The largest amount of increase in satisfaction is for male AI, and the smallest amount is for female humans. The decision is exactly the same. Everything's exactly the same. When it comes from male AI, it really pleases me. The same decision is a bit less appreciated if it comes from a female human manager. And then we looked at those people, those participants who were not selected to receive the reward. We expected them to be upset. We expected them, the rating or the score they give to the manager goes down. And that, of course, happened. But we see that the decrease in satisfaction or the perception of fairness was really small when the manager was a male human, whereas it was huge if it was a female AI, but particularly big also when the manager was a female human. Again, the decision is the same. Let's say, I'm not going to promote you this year, you have to wait until next year. If that comes from a male human, okay, of course you know the best. The same decision comes from a female human manager, creates a lot more outrage. I know this is a bit of sad part of my talk, so let me move on to the sixth person I want to talk about. Anyone by any chance recognizes this person or this apparatus? We have economists and political scientists in the room. Few more. This apparatus is called Mechanical Turk. This was a sort of device that was built in 1770 by a Austro-Hungarian inventor. It's a very interesting. So there is this sort of doll which plays chess, supposedly. But in reality, there is some space inside the machine where an actual human can go. And the actual human not only sees the chess table, but also can move the pieces. So this was demonstrated in different fairs and exhibitions as a machine that can play chess. And they would hire very good chess players, put them inside the box, and other people were very excited to pay some money and play against the machine, and often they lost against the machine. So this went on for 85 years, and Benjamin Franklin, Napoleon, lots of famous people played against this apparatus, and many of them lost. I bring this up because, in a way, it's very relevant to the way that we are dealing with AI today. Here there is a human in the machine. The algorithms that we refer to collectively are trained based on the data coming from human. At least that's the sort of most common paradigm. But back then, people were very excited about this mysterious machine because they didn't expect the machine to be acting like a human. They didn't expect the machine to be intelligent. What we do today is slightly different. We have this sort of algorithms that can make interesting decisions, can generate readable text, but we are trying to put them in a box that looks like a human. And we are humanizing and anthropomorphizing the AI, maybe just because it's more exciting and more exotic and we can sell it better. The same way that the Mechanical Turk, was a very exotic object back then. By the way, the reason that it was called Turk is also not irrelevant. You have to think about the Ottoman Empire and the interaction they had with Austro-Hungarian Empire and so on and so forth. So it was exotic, to say the least. Again, back to the ads. This is what I got on YouTube the other day. This is an AI tutor you can talk to and you can improve your language, because in this case, English. So there is a participant on the right, a human, and then this AI tutor who is female. Okay, I can understand if the task is to improve your language, it helps to have AI look like a human. But it doesn't need to be super attractive. So I found myself in this weird cycle of thinking, we are objectifying these AI faces, but then of course it's an object in the first place. So we are humanizing the objects and then objectifying these humanized objects. Why I care? Because again, this changes the way that we expect to interact with other humans. This changes the way that I might be interacting and seeing my human teachers and human tutors. This is just one example. Here is another one. I made a mistake of clicking on one of these and they are coming. Again, super attractive AI tutor, which I'm not sure what would be the benefit of this sort of design of the product. We have to do a few things. If we want to benefit from the technology in the most efficient way, or at least in the least harmful way, we have to fix the public discourse. The current public discourse about AI is mostly driven by Hollywood and commercial motives. We need to talk to civil society. There are parts of the society who are more in danger than the others. I hope some of the examples I gave you were convincing in that regard. We need regulation, and I talk a bit more about regulation later. We need a conversation in the industry. There is huge force in the market, I don't deny that, but even if that's the goal, even our goal is to have a sustainable growth in the market and in the industry, everyone benefits from more thoughtful design, from more thoughtful provision of the service. Of course, scientific and technical community is important, but also education and digital literacy. That's why I'm very happy and excited about the aspect of my role, that is the public engagement as the Workday Chair of Technology and Society, because I do want to go to schools, I do want to go to different places and demystify AI, demystify the technology that we are selling as the snake oil, the modern snake oil these days. I mentioned Hollywood, and that's a very good example because they managed, if you remember, they went on a strike a couple of years ago and they managed to receive protection from the industry because they felt their job is in danger. I'm not quite sure. I think when it comes to creative industry, AI could be extremely useful. You remember the Terminator image I showed you. Actually, James Cameron is one of the people who have benefited a lot from virtual reality and AI technologies and Gen AI and so on and so forth. And when you look at the percentage of movies that are AI themed over the past 20 years, there is a steady growth. So I find it a little bit sort of ironic that one of the only communities who have received protection against AI are the ones who are talking about the AI the most and perhaps are giving this misperception of AI the most. And then when I read last year that actually James Cameron is on the board of an AI company in London, I really couldn't understand what's going on. So the last person I want to talk about is this gentleman. Does anyone know him? He's Dragoș Tudorache. He is a Romanian politician, a member of the European Parliament, and one of the leading figures on the AI Act, EU AI Act that was released last year. That I jumped on it the moment I heard that it was released, because I've been waiting for this. And I managed to meet him a few months ago. Our colleagues from ADAPT have invited him, and I had one question for him. The question was based on my own reading of the AI Act, where I found nothing about military use of AI in the whole act. Well, that's not correct. I found 11 mentions of the word military, all of them referring to the fact that the AI Act does not apply to military use of AI. Basically, preempting all the responsibilities that could be assigned to the AI Act when it comes to military use of AI. So I asked him, why is that? Why AI Act does not talk about use of AI in military? And his answer was, it's complicated. You know, military is not something we talk about at the EU level. It's something depending on each own state and their own policies. We wanted this to go through as quickly as possible. We thought if we put military outside, then people would be, like countries, would be more supportive of the acts altogether. That's not really convincing, because I'm not very worried about, AI uprising against humans, the ones that they show us in Hollywood. I am, however, very much worried about automated brutality against humans. You want to label it as cybercrime, you want to label it as state-supported act of war, you might to label it as act of terror. It doesn't really matter. Humans get killed, and we have been already using machine learning to decide whom to target. We have been already using AI in different shapes and forms to kill each other. And I talked a little bit about that earlier, and I think that's where regulation is most needed. And ironically, that's exactly where the regulation deliberately doesn't talk about any of it. Do you recognize this image? You've heard this story, right? A journalist was added to a private channel of conversation in relation to the attack that US had on Houthi rebels in Yemen a few days ago. And That was embarrassing, the way that this conversation was conducted, the breach itself, and so on and so forth. And it appeared everywhere on the news. Not many people talked about the fact that 53 people were killed in those attacks. And I particularly picked this example as opposed to, let's say, Gaza war, because it's obvious that I'm not supporting the rebels, okay? They just sent missiles towards ship. I don't think they are fine in any shape or form, yet the fact that we just send missiles toward where they live and kill them, 53 of them, including 5 children, bothers me, okay? Of course, usually what you hear in response is that, yes, but the rebels or any other people involved in such situations use children and their families as human shield. Yes, of course they do that. You should find a way to work around it. If I have a fight with my neighbor, which I never have, and I want to go punch him in the face and he's holding his baby, I would politely ask, put down the baby, and then I punch him in the face. I am oversimplifying the situation, but when things like this happen, I really wonder if we amplify the power, the military power that we have based on the technologies that we don't quite understand how they work. And Rainer gave an amazing lecture this morning. We sort of see where, let's say, large language models work, but we can't really say that it fails until it fails. So if you're making decisions that affect people's lives based on these technologies, and I am really worried about the future, particularly now that I'm going to be a father. Let's change the mood a bit, shall we? I'm going to show you some cartoons from the past, and all these cartoons were supposed to show the future. This one is, the artist is unknown, I guess. This was painted in 1930s and supposed to show the future. And I really like it because it's quite accurate in a way. This is the way that we communicate these days. However, the design is sort of very old-fashioned. This one, again, was made in early 1900, and the task was how people move around in 100 years. We fly over water now, we can't go places, but I like is that the way that they thought we're gonna fly is that we attach the horse to a balloon, which is quite funny. This one is the question is that can it be done? Can we have newspapers on TVs? We read news on our phones these days. The design is very different. It's not a picture of a newspaper put on the screen. This is my favorite, 1969 Japanese vision of the future classroom. It's a very modern classroom. The students seem to have some sort of computer in front of them. The teacher is teaching remotely through Zoom, I guess. But then, in this very modernized classroom, there are some robots that go around the class and smack the naughty children, which is a very interesting mix of old and the new. And finally, this is how people in 1914 thought that we will be dressed in the future, which is quite accurate if you're on Instagram. And this is a picture I took of a book in a library a few years ago, the Internet Yellow Pages. Okay, there are young people in the room, they don't know what Yellow Pages are, because we have the internet. So this book was a collection of URL and web addresses of everything on the web, which is such a sort of stupid circular idea. We don't need Yellow Pages just because we can Google, we can search, we have these digital databases. They kept publishing this for 10 years before they realized no one is buying it. So I'm showing this sort of half futuristic images just to make a point that usually when we are at the start of embracing a new technology, we have distorted ideas about it. We want to do the new, we want to use the new technology, but in an old way, in the mindset that is not updated and is not catching up with the possibilities of the new technologies. More importantly, when we are using new technologies, inevitably we become more powerful. But if we still have issues, if we are still sexist, if we are discriminatory against each other, if we are racist, with better tools, we can just be more of those things. We need to fix those problems before embarking on this new sort of massive scale automation of tasks in different organizations and places. I do not fear that AI suppresses humanity. As we discussed again earlier today, I don't think we are anywhere to get to general intelligence, general artificial intelligence, but I am concerned about amplified human prejudice, ignorance, bias, cruelty by technologies, particularly AI and machine learning and all the other data-driven artifacts. To finish off, I'm going to show you this sort of heartwarming video. It's filmed in Helsinki, where a delivery guy is helping his colleague who is stuck. Thank you very much.
Friends, colleagues, we give you our inaugural share of technology and society. Extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.